Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova, watching the massive alien ship approach through the viewing screen. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. After 300 years of searching the stars, humanity had finally found them. They were not alone. The alien vessel was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It looked like a giant crystal sphere, glowing with purple light. The ship was 3 times larger than the Terra Nova, which was already the biggest ship humans had ever built. Strange symbols covered its surface, pulsing with energy that made the space around it shimmer. "Captain, they're sending a message," said Lieutenant Tom Bradley from the communications station. His voice was tight with excitement and fear. "Put it through," Jake ordered. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something that was definitely not human. The creature had 4 arms, silver skin that seemed to move like liquid metal, and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on its face. When it spoke, the translation computer turned its words into English. "I am High Commander Vexthal of the Zephyrian Collective," the alien said. Its voice was cold and musical at the same time. "You are the species called humans. We have been watching you." Jake stepped forward. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison, representing Earth and all human colonies. We come in peace." The alien's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. "Peace. Yes, we know of this concept. You are new to space travel. Very new. Like children playing with dangerous toys." Dr. Amy Rodriguez, the ship's lead scientist, moved closer to Jake. She had spent her whole life studying the possibility of alien life. Now that they were here, she noticed something troubling in the way the alien spoke. There was no respect in its voice, only the tone someone might use when talking to a pet. "We would like to learn about each other," Jake said carefully. "Perhaps we could trade knowledge and goods." High Commander Vexthal made a sound that might have been laughter. "Trade." "Yes, primitive species often wish to trade. We have much to offer. Technology that would advance your civilization by thousands of years. Weapons that could protect your little colonies. Medicine that could extend your short lives." "What would you want in return?" Dr. Rodriguez asked. The alien's eyes focused on her. "Simple things. Access to your worlds. Mining rights to your asteroids. Some of your people to work in our facilities. Nothing too difficult." Jake felt a chill run down his spine, but he kept his expression neutral. "We would need to discuss any agreement with our government." "Of course," Vexthal said. "We understand you have primitive political structures. We will wait, but not too long. The galaxy is vast, and we have other business to attend to." The conversation continued for 2 hours. The Zephyrians talked about their great civilization, which had existed for 50,000 years. They ruled over hundreds of worlds and dozens of other species. They had technology that could create planets and destroy stars. They spoke about humans the way adults might discuss amusing children. Dr. Rodriguez asked many questions about Zephyrian science and culture. She learned that the collective was made up of 3 different alien species that had joined together long ago. The Zephyrians were the leaders, but they worked with the Kethmori, who looked like giant insects, and the Veltar, who were energy beings that lived inside mechanical bodies. Throughout the meeting, Dr. Rodriguez noticed small things that worried her. The way Vexthal's eyes narrowed when Jake mentioned Earth's population of 12 billion people. How the aliens seemed very interested in human industrial capacity and military strength. The questions about how humans governed themselves and whether all colonies followed Earth's orders. When meeting ended, Vexthal gave them several small devices. "Gifts," he called them. "To show our friendship. Study them. Learn from them. We will return in 1 month for your answer about trade." The alien ship disappeared in a flash of purple light, leaving the Terra Nova alone in space. Dr. Rodriguez immediately began studying the alien devices. They were beautiful objects that looked like they were made from crystallized starlight. Each one contained technology far beyond human understanding. There were medical scanners that could diagnose any disease, communication devices that could send messages across the galaxy instantly, and power cells that seemed to create energy from nothing. But as she studied them deeper, Amy found things that made her uncomfortable. Hidden inside each device were tiny components that she couldn't identify. When she tried to remove them, they dissolved. When she scanned them, they showed up as empty space. It was as if something was hiding inside the gifts. Jake spent his time writing reports for Earth Command. He tried to capture the feeling of the meeting, the sense that something was not quite right. The Zephyrians had been polite, even friendly, but there was something underneath their words that felt dangerous. Lieutenant Bradley worked on analyzing the communication signals from the alien ship. He discovered that the Zephyrians had been scanning the Terra Nova during their entire conversation. Not just looking at it, but deep scans that mapped every circuit, every piece of equipment, every weapon. 3 weeks after the meeting, Jake received new orders from Earth. Admiral Ben Hayes himself had written them. The government was excited about the possibilities of alien contact, but they were also worried. Jake was to return to Earth immediately for debriefing. As the Terra Nova began its journey home, Dr. Rodriguez made a disturbing discovery. One of the alien devices had activated on its own and was transmitting something. She couldn't decode the message, but she could track where it was going. It was being sent in the direction the Zephyrian ship had gone. "Captain," she said, bringing her findings to Jake. "I think they're watching us. The gifts aren't just gifts. They're spies." Jake looked at the data on her tablet. The transmission was weak but constant, sending information about everything happening on the ship. What kind of information? Everything. Our location, our speed, our destination. But also things like how many people are on board, what weapons we carry, how our systems work. Amy's face was pale. "I think they're learning how to fight us." The trip back to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, more of the alien devices activated. Each one began transmitting different information. By the time they reached Earth, Jake realized that the Zephyrians now knew more about human technology than most humans did. When they landed, Jake went straight to Admiral Hayes with his concerns. The Admiral was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes. He listened to everything Jake and Dr. Rodriguez had to say. "So, you think they're planning something?" the Admiral asked. "I think they were never interested in fair trade," Jake replied. "I think they see us as something to be conquered." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. "Then we better be ready." Commander Lisa Torres was having the worst day of her military career, and it was only getting worse. 3 months had passed since the first contact with the Zephyrians, and strange things were happening across human space. Equipment that had worked perfectly for years was suddenly breaking down. Communication systems were failing at the worst possible times. And now her own base on New Austin was falling apart. "Commander, the main power generator just shut down again," reported Sergeant Matt Cooper, wiping sweat from his forehead. "That's the 3rd time this week." Lisa looked at the diagnostic screen showing red warning lights all across the base systems. New Austin was humanity's farthest colony, a mining world on the edge of explored space. It was supposed to be their early warning system if anything dangerous came from deep space. Instead, it was becoming a liability. "Have Chief Martinez check the Zephyrian components again," she ordered. The alien trade goods had arrived 2 weeks ago, just as promised. Beautiful devices that were supposed to improve their mining equipment and power systems. The Zephyrian ambassador had assured Earth Command that these gifts would make human colonies more efficient and profitable. Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez was in the main technical bay, surrounded by alien devices that glowed with soft blue light. She looked up when Lisa approached, her face grim. "Commander, I found something," Rosa said quietly. "You're not going to like it." She led Lisa to a workbench where she had opened one of the Zephyrian power cells. Inside the beautiful crystal casing was something that looked like a mechanical spider, no bigger than a coin. Its tiny legs were connected to hair-thin wires that spread throughout the device. "What is that?" Lisa asked. "I think it's a control system," Rosa replied. "Watch this." She touched the spider-like component with a small tool. Immediately, every piece of equipment in the room shut down. The lights went out, the computers died, and even their communicators stopped working. Lisa felt a cold fear growing in her stomach. "How many of these do we have?" 47 devices scattered throughout the base. And according to the shipping records, every human colony has received similar gifts. Rosa's voice was barely a whisper. "Commander, I think we've been infiltrated." That evening, Lisa called an emergency meeting with her senior staff. In the secure briefing room, she shared Rose's discovery with her officers. The room was silent except for the hum of the air recycling system. "So you're saying the aliens have been sabotaging us?" asked Lieutenant Dan Miller, the base's intelligence officer. "I'm saying they've given us the tools to sabotage ourselves," Lisa replied. "Every time we use their technology, we're giving them more control over our systems." While Lisa was dealing with a crisis on New Austin, Admiral Ben Hayes was facing an even bigger problem on Earth. His intelligence team had been monitoring Zephyrian communications since the first contact, trying to learn more about their new trading partners. What they had discovered was terrifying. Lieutenant Susan Wright, the Navy's best code specialist, brought the translated messages to Admiral Hayes personally. Her hands were shaking as she handed him the data pad. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," she said. The messages were between High Commander Vexthal and someone called the Supreme Coordinator. They were written in a Zephyrian military code that had taken weeks to break. As Admiral Hayes read them, his face grew darker with each line. Phase 1 nearly complete. One message read, "Human infrastructure mapped and vulnerable. Sabotage devices operational in 847 locations. Population centers identified. Military capabilities assessed as negligible." Another message was even worse. "Humans more primitive than expected. Conquest should be complete within one standard cycle. Enslavement protocols ready for implementation. No significant resistance anticipated." Admiral Hayes read through dozens of messages. They painted a clear picture of the Zephyrian plan. The aliens had never intended peaceful trade. They had been preparing for war from the moment they made contact. The gifts were weapons designed to cripple human defenses when the attack began. The most chilling message was the most recent. "Supreme Coordinator approves final phase. Human species to be given choice. Unconditional surrender or total elimination. Attack fleet assembles at staging point Zeta 7. Commence final preparations." Admiral Hayes immediately contacted President Karen Mitchell. The president was a calm woman who had led humanity through several crises, but even she looked shaken when she heard the news. "How long do we have?" she asked. "According to the intercepted messages, their fleet is still gathering," Admiral Hayes replied. "Maybe 2 weeks, possibly less." "What are our options?" Admiral Hayes had been thinking about that question ever since he read the first intercepted message. "We have 3 choices. We can try to negotiate. We can surrender immediately. Or we can fight." President Mitchell was quiet for a long moment. "What are our chances if we fight?" "Honestly, not good. They have superior technology, more ships, and they've been planning this for months. They know our capabilities better than we know theirs." Meanwhile, on New Austin, Commander Torres was discovering just how deep the Zephyrian infiltration went. Chief Martinez had found the spider-like control devices in every piece of alien technology. Worse, the devices had been learning about human systems and sending information back to the Zephyrians. "They know everything," Rosa reported. "Our communication frequencies, our weapon specifications, our defensive strategies. Every time we used their equipment, it was studying us and reporting back." Lisa realized that every human colony was in the same situation. The aliens had given them Trojan horses disguised as gifts. When the attack came, the Zephyrians could shut down human defenses with the push of a button. She immediately sent an encrypted warning to Earth Command, but she wasn't sure if it would get through. The alien devices might be intercepting their communications too. Dr. Amy Rodriguez, who had returned to Earth after the first contact, was working frantically in her laboratory. She had been studying Zephyrian technology for months, trying to understand how it worked. Now she understood that she had been studying weapons, not gifts. "They're incredibly advanced," she explained to Admiral Hayes. "Their technology is based on quantum manipulation that we barely understand. But there's something else. They seem to think we're much more primitive than we actually are." "What do you mean?" the Admiral asked. "Look at what they sent us," Amy said, pointing to one of the devices. "This is powerful technology, but it's also old. Like they took it from a museum. I think they underestimate us." She pulled up a holographic display showing the internal structure of a Zephyrian communication device. See this? The control systems are designed to work against technology that's maybe 200 years behind ours. Our current defensive systems might be able to resist their control signals. This was the first good news Admiral Hayes had heard in days. Are you sure? Not completely, Amy admitted. But I think they've been studying us based on what we had 50 years ago, not what we have now. They don't know about our latest developments. As reports came in from colonies across human space, the picture became clearer. The Zephyrians had infiltrated every major human settlement. They had maps of every defensive installation, knowledge of every military unit, and the ability to shut down critical systems when they attacked. But they had also made a mistake. They had assumed that humans would react like the other species they had conquered. They expected panic, confusion, and quick surrender. They had not planned for human stubbornness and ingenuity. Admiral Hayes called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. Representatives from every human colony attended via secure quantum link. When he explained the situation, the reaction was immediate and unanimous. "We fight," said Commander Torres from New Austin. "Agreed," said General Paul Carter from Mars Base. "The colonies stand with Earth," said Captain Morrison, who was now commanding the defense of the Outer Ring settlements. President Mitchell looked around the virtual conference room at the determined faces of humanity's military leaders. "Then we fight. God help us, we fight." The meeting ended with a simple understanding. Humanity had been betrayed, infiltrated, and marked for destruction or slavery. The Zephyrians had superior technology and overwhelming numbers. But they had also underestimated the one thing that made humans dangerous: their refusal to give up. As the conference ended, Admiral Hayes began issuing orders. Every human military unit was to prepare for immediate attack. All Zephyrian technology was to be disconnected and isolated. Emergency protocols were activated across human space. The war was coming, whether humanity was ready or not. The message came without warning to every human communication device in the galaxy. Televisions, computers, personal communicators, even emergency radios suddenly displayed the same image: High Commander Vexthul sitting on what looked like a throne made of black crystal. His 3 eyes glowed with cold light as he began to speak. "Humans of the primitive Earth civilization," his translated voice echoed across billions of devices. "I am High Commander Vexthul of the Zephyrian Collective. Your time of independence is over." President Karen Mitchell was in the middle of a security briefing when every screen in the White House displayed the alien commander. Secret Service agents immediately moved to protect her, but she waved them back. The whole world needed to hear this. "For 3 months, we have studied your species," Vexthul continued. "We have learned your weaknesses, mapped your defenses, and judged your capabilities. You are children playing with tools you do not understand in a galaxy that does not care about your survival." The alien stood from his throne, and the camera followed him as he moved to a large window. Outside, massive ships could be seen floating in space, hundreds of them, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. "We offer you a choice," Vexthul said, his voice becoming colder. "Surrender now, accept your place as subjects of the collective, and your species will be allowed to continue existing. Your colonies will become our mining operations. Your people will work in our facilities. Your leaders will serve our administrators. You will be cared for, protected, and guided by a superior civilization." Admiral Ben Hayes watched the broadcast from his command center, surrounded by his staff. Every face in the room showed the same expression: controlled fury. They had all seen the intercepted messages. They knew what cared for really meant. However, Vexthul continued, "If you choose the path of foolish resistance, you will be cleansed from the galaxy entirely. We have done this before. 67 species have faced this same choice. 63 chose surrender and still exist as valued members of our collective. 4 chose resistance." The alien's 3 eyes seemed to look directly through the camera at every human watching. Those 4 species no longer exist. Captain Jake Morrison was aboard the Terra Nova, now stationed near Mars as part of the hastily assembled defense fleet. He watched the broadcast with his crew, seeing the fear and anger on their faces. These were good people who had signed up to explore the stars, not to fight for humanity's survival. "You have 72 hours to respond," Vexthul announced. "At the end of that time, we will either receive your unconditional surrender, or we will begin cleansing operations. Choose wisely, humans. This is your only chance." The broadcast ended abruptly, leaving every human settlement in shocked silence. Within minutes, President Mitchell was on a secure conference call with every world leader on Earth and every colonial governor in human space. The debate that followed was brief, but intense. "We have to consider surrender," said Chancellor Weber from the European Federation. "If they're as powerful as they claim, resistance might mean the death of our entire species. And if we surrender, we become slaves," replied Premier Chong from the Asian Alliance. "Is that really living?" Governor Martinez from the Mars colony spoke up. "My people didn't come to Mars to bow down to alien masters. We came here to build something better." The argument continued for an hour, but President Mitchell could see which way the discussion was heading. Humanity had spent 3 centuries reaching for the stars. They had survived wars, plagues, environmental disasters, and the challenges of space colonization. They had not come this far to give up now. But then High Commander Vexthul decided to demonstrate the cost of resistance. The attack on Europa Station came exactly 12 hours after the ultimatum. The research facility orbited Jupiter, home to 3,000 scientists and their families who were studying the possibility of life in the moon's underground oceans. Dr. Amy Rodriguez was monitoring the situation from Earth when the distress signals started coming in. "Emergency. Unknown ships approaching. They're not responding to communications." The Europa Station's commander, Colonel Brian Kelly, managed to send one final transmission before the station was destroyed. "They're not even asking us to surrender. They're just, oh God, they're charging weapons. All stations, this is Europa Base. They're going to." The transmission ended in static. Within hours, long-range sensors confirmed what everyone feared. Europa Station was gone. 3,000 people had been vaporized in seconds, not as an act of war, but as a demonstration. The Zephyrians wanted humanity to know what resistance would cost. The alien demonstration had the opposite effect from what they intended. Instead of terrifying humanity into submission, it made them angry. Very angry. President Mitchell called an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. This time, there was no debate. "They just murdered 3,000 innocent people," she said, her voice steady, but filled with cold fury. "Men, women, children who had never hurt anyone. Scientists whose only crime was trying to understand the universe." Admiral Hayes spread tactical displays across the conference table. "They wanted to show us their power. Instead, they showed us who they really are. This isn't about conquest or integration. This is about extermination." General Paul Carter, commander of the Mars Defense Force, slammed his fist on the table. "My daughter was on Europa Station. She was studying marine biology. She was 23 years old." His voice was quiet, but everyone could hear the rage underneath. "These aliens want a war? They've got one." Similar scenes were playing out across human space. The murder of Europa Station had united humanity in a way that politicians and diplomats never could. Every human settlement, from the smallest mining outpost to the great cities of Earth, was filled with the same determination. Commander Lisa Torres received the news on New Austin while her engineers were working to remove all Zephyrian technology from the base. "They killed the Europa researchers," she told her assembled staff. 3,000 people who never did anything except try to learn. Her soldiers looked at her with expressions of grim determination. These were miners and technicians, not professional warriors, but they were ready to fight. "What are our orders, Commander?" asked Sergeant Cooper. "We hold the space," Lisa replied. "No matter what comes through that space, we hold the line." Back on Earth, Dr. Rodriguez was working frantically in her laboratory. The Europa attack had given her new information about Zephyrian weapons. The energy signatures from the attack showed that their weapons were incredibly powerful, but they also showed something else. "Admiral, I need to show you something," she said when Hayes visited her lab. She pulled up the sensor data from Europa's final moments. Look at this. The weapon that destroyed the station, it's the same type of energy beam we detected during our first meeting with them. But see this fluctuation pattern. Admiral Hayes studied the display. What am I looking for? The beam had to charge for almost 30 seconds before firing. That's a long time in a space battle. And look at this. After firing, there's a 2-minute cooldown period where the energy levels drop to almost nothing. So their super weapons have limitations, Hayes said. Every weapon has limitations, Amy replied. The question is whether we can survive long enough to exploit them. As the 72-hour deadline approached, humanity made its final preparations. Military units that had been scattered across human space moved into defensive positions. Civilian populations were evacuated to secure facilities. Emergency protocols that had been theoretical for decades were suddenly being implemented across hundreds of worlds. Captain Morrison received his final orders while the Terra Nova waited in Earth's outer defense perimeter. All ships, this is Admiral Hayes. In 6 hours, our deadline expires. We all know what our answer is going to be. The communication channel crackled with responses from dozens of ships. Destroyers, cruisers, mining vessels that had been hastily armed with military weapons, even civilian ships whose crews had volunteered to fight. We're not the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, Admiral Hayes continued. We're not the most advanced. But we're fighting for our homes, our families, and our future. That makes us dangerous. President Mitchell prepared for what might be her final address to the human race. She stood in the Oval Office, looking out at the city, where her ancestors had built the foundations of human democracy. In a few hours, she would have to tell an alien empire that humanity chose to fight rather than surrender. She thought about the 3,000 people who had died on Europa Station. She thought about the billions of humans living across hundreds of worlds who were counting on her leadership. She thought about future generations who might never be born if humanity lost this war. But mostly, she thought about the look in High Commander Vexthal's 3 eyes when he had offered humanity the choice between slavery and extinction. There had been no doubt in those eyes, no consideration that humans might be anything more than primitive animals to be controlled or eliminated. The aliens were about to learn something important about human nature. When you back humanity into a corner, when you threaten everything they care about, when you give them no choice but to fight or die, they become the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The 72 hours were almost up. Humanity's answer was ready. Colonel Steve Walker stood in front of a massive blast door that had been sealed for 15 years. The door was built into the side of an asteroid in the Ceres belt, hidden among thousands of similar rocks. To any passing ship, it looked like just another mining operation. The Zephyrians had never detected it during their surveillance of human space. "Are you sure about this, Colonel?" asked Major Kelly Brooks, his second-in-command. "Once we open that door, there's no going back." Steve entered his authorization code into the security panel. "The aliens want to wipe us out. I'd say that qualifies as the emergency we built this place for." The blast door slowly opened with a grinding sound that echoed through the asteroid's interior. Beyond it lay something the Zephyrians had never imagined: humanity's secret military installation, codenamed Project Prometheus. The facility stretched deep into the asteroid, its corridors lined with equipment that represented 20 years of classified human development. While the aliens had been watching humanity's civilian space program, they had completely missed the military projects hidden in asteroids, moons, and deep space installations. "Welcome to humanity's insurance policy," Steve said as they walked through corridors filled with weapons and technology that officially didn't exist. Project Prometheus had begun after humanity's first encounters with potentially hostile alien signals from deep space. Earth's military leaders had realized that if humanity ever faced a superior alien threat, they would need advantages that enemies couldn't predict or prepare for. So they had built secret facilities and developed classified technologies while maintaining the appearance of a peaceful, barely armed species. Chief Engineer Maria Santos was already at work in the main laboratory, activating systems that had been dormant for years. She had helped design many of the weapons stored in facilities like this one. Now she would finally see if they worked as intended. "Status report," Steve ordered as he entered the lab. All systems coming online, Maria replied, her fingers dancing across control panels. Stealth generators are operational. Quantum torpedo production is beginning. The Fusion Lance prototypes are ready for field testing. Steve looked at the displays showing weapon specifications that would have shocked the Zephyrians. Humanity had not been idle during their expansion into space. They had been preparing for war against enemies they had never seen. The stealth technology alone would have surprised the aliens. While they had been watching human ships with traditional chemical rockets and metal hulls, the secret military vessels used quantum field generators that could bend light and sensor waves around them. A human stealth ship could sit right next to a Zephyrian vessel without being detected. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Hayes was coordinating the activation of similar facilities across human space. Hidden bases on the moons of Saturn, concealed weapons platforms in the asteroid belt, and underground bunkers on Mars were all coming online simultaneously. Project Prometheus is fully operational, reported General Carter from his command center on Mars. All hidden installations are responding. We have 47 secret facilities that the aliens never detected. President Mitchell watched the activation from the White House Situation Room. For years, she had authorized funding for projects that she was told she could never discuss publicly. Black budget items that Congress approved without knowing what they were paying for.
Now she understood why.
How long have we been preparing for this? She asked Admiral Hayes. Since the first day we detected alien signals, Hayes replied. We hoped we'd never need these weapons. But we weren't going to be caught defenseless. Commander Torres received new orders on New Austin that changed everything about her situation. Instead of preparing to defend a vulnerable mining base with standard equipment, she was being told to activate weapon systems that had been hidden beneath the colony for 10 years. Chief Martinez, report to Sublevel 7, she ordered. Commander, there is no Sublevel 7, Rosa replied. Lisa smiled grimly.
There is now.
Use authorization code Prometheus 77 Alpha. Rosa's eyes widened as she realized what that meant. Within hours, the mining equipment on New Austin had been moved aside to reveal concealed weapon emplacements and shield generators. The small frontier colony was actually one of humanity's most heavily defended positions. Captain Morrison received the most surprising orders of all. He was told to dock the Terra Nova at a coordinate in deep space that showed up as empty on all sensors. When he arrived at the location, reality seemed to shimmer, and suddenly a massive space station appeared out of nowhere. This is Prometheus Station, came a transmission. Welcome to humanity's real fleet. The station was enormous, easily 5 times larger than anything the Zephyrians had seen during their surveillance. Docked around it were ships that looked nothing like the human vessels the aliens had catalogued. These ships were sleek, dark, and covered with technology that bent sensor waves around them. Jake found himself face to face with Admiral Sarah Kim, commander of humanity's secret fleet. She was a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many classified briefings. Captain Morrison, your ship has been selected for a special retrofit, she said. We're going to turn the Terra Nova into something the aliens have never seen before. The retrofit took 18 hours. When it was complete, the Terra Nova looked the same from the outside, but everything inside had changed. New engines that could move the ship faster than anything in the known galaxy. Weapons that could punch through energy shields like they were paper. And most importantly, a quantum cloak that made the ship completely invisible to Zephyrian sensors. How is this possible? Jake asked as he reviewed the new specifications. We've had some of our best minds working on theoretical weapons for decades, Admiral Kim explained. The Zephyrians made the mistake of judging us based on what we show in public. They never looked for what we keep hidden. Dr. Rodriguez was brought to a classified facility beneath the Antarctic ice, where she discovered that human scientists had been studying alien technology for much longer than she had known. The facility contained artifacts from dozens of alien civilizations, collected over centuries of space exploration. We've been preparing for this contact for 300 years, explained Dr. Frank Chin, the facility's director. Every time we found evidence of alien life, we studied it and developed countermeasures. The laboratory contained weapons specifically designed to fight energy-based life forms like the Veltar, biotoxins that could affect the insectoid Kethmori, and, most importantly, a virus that could infiltrate Zephyrian computer systems. You want to turn their own sabotage tactics against them, Amy realized.
Exactly.
They planted control devices in our equipment. Now we're going to plant control devices in theirs. Across human space, the secret preparations were revealing the true scope of humanity's hidden capabilities. Mining asteroids turned out to be weapons platforms. Civilian ships revealed concealed military systems. Research stations activated defensive shields that could stop planet-killing weapons. The Zephyrians had thought they were facing a primitive species with chemical rockets and metal weapons. Instead, they were about to encounter quantum torpedoes, plasma shields, artificial intelligence targeting systems, and stealth technology that was generations ahead of their own. But the most important advantage humanity had was something the aliens couldn't have anticipated: the human capacity for deception and long-term planning. While the Zephyrians had spent 50,000 years conquering primitive species through overwhelming force, humans had spent centuries preparing for enemies they had never seen. Colonel Walker activated the final systems in the Prometheus facility. All stations, this is Prometheus Command. Project Prometheus is fully operational. Humanity's real military is ready for war. The hidden bases began producing weapons and deploying defensive systems that had been designed in secret laboratories. Stealth ships moved into position around Zephyrian staging areas. Artificial intelligence systems began analyzing alien tactical patterns and developing countermeasures. President Mitchell received the final report as the 72-hour deadline approached. Madam President, all Prometheus facilities are operational. Our hidden fleet is deployed. Our secret weapons are armed. She looked at the tactical display showing humanity's true military strength. The aliens had been watching a carefully crafted illusion, seeing only what humanity wanted them to see. They had planned their attack based on incomplete information. Admiral Hayes, what are our actual chances? She asked. Hayes studied the classified reports. If we were fighting with the equipment they think we have, we'd lose in hours. But we're not. We're fighting with weapons they don't know exist, using tactics they've never seen, from positions they can't detect. And I think we're about to teach the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity. The countdown to war continued, but now humanity was ready with weapons and capabilities that the Zephyrians had never imagined. The aliens thought they were about to fight helpless primitives. Instead, they were about to discover that humanity's greatest weapon was their ability to prepare for threats that didn't exist yet. Project Prometheus was online. The real war was about to begin. The 72 hours expired at exactly 14:30 Earth Standard Time. President Mitchell had sent her response to the Zephyrians 3 hours earlier, a simple message that said, "Humanity declines your offer. Come and take our worlds if you can." High Commander Vexthul received the message aboard his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, a massive vessel that stretched 15 kilometers from bow to stern. Around him floated his invasion fleet, 800 ships carrying enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds. Foolish creatures, Vexthul said to his tactical commander. Begin the cleansing. Start with their outer colonies and work inward. Let them watch their civilization die world by world. The first wave of Zephyrian ships moved toward the human colony of New Austin, expecting to find a lightly defended mining operation. Commander Torres watched them approach on her sensors, counting over 50 enemy vessels against her single base. All units, this is New Austin Command, she broadcast to her defenders. Remember, they think we're just miners. Let's show them what human miners can do. The Zephyrian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their ships glowing with the purple energy that powered their weapons. Their sensors detected exactly what they expected: a small human base with minimal defenses and outdated technology. Subcommander Kextar led the attack force. Broadcast surrender demand to the humans, he ordered. When they refuse, destroy the base. Make it quick. The surrender demand was transmitted to New Austin base. Commander Torres replied exactly as planned. We will never surrender to alien invaders. As expected, Kextar said. All ships, charge weapons. Prepare to demonstrate the price of resistance. The Zephyrian ships began powering their energy cannons, the same weapons that had destroyed Europa Station. Purple light gathered at the tips of their vessels as they prepared to vaporize another human settlement. That's when New Austin revealed its true nature. The mining equipment that had been visible on the surface suddenly moved aside on hidden tracks, revealing massive weapon turrets that rose from concealed bunkers. Energy shields snapped into place around the base, glowing with blue light that made the air itself shimmer. And from hidden launch bays carved into the asteroid's surface, human fighters began streaming out. What is this? Kextar demanded as his sensors registered weapon signatures that shouldn't exist. The intelligence report said this was a primitive mining facility. Commander Torres smiled as her hidden defenses came online. All weapons fire at will. Show them what human engineering can do. The concealed plasma cannons opened fire, sending beams of superheated energy that punched through Zephyrian shields like they were made of paper. The aliens had designed their defenses to stop the primitive kinetic weapons they thought humans used. They were not prepared for focused plasma that burned at 10 million degrees. 3 Zephyrian ships exploded in the first volley. Their crews didn't even have time to send distress signals before their vessels were reduced to glowing debris. Impossible! Kextar shouted. Return fire. Destroy those weapons. The Zephyrian fleet began firing their energy cannons at New Austin, but their beams splashed harmlessly against the base's shields. Dr. Rodriguez's analysis had been correct. Human defensive technology was more advanced than the aliens realized. Meanwhile, the human fighters were causing chaos among the Zephyrian formation. These weren't the clumsy chemical-powered ships the aliens had studied. They were sleek stealth fighters that appeared on sensors for only seconds before vanishing again, striking from impossible angles. Lieutenant Dan Miller piloted one of the fighters, weaving between enemy ships that couldn't track his movements. "This is Ghost Leader," he reported. "Their targeting systems can't lock onto us. We're invisible to their sensors." The battle that the Zephyrians had expected to last minutes stretched into hours. Instead of destroying a helpless mining base, they found themselves fighting a fortress that seemed to have unlimited ammunition and impenetrable defenses. Worse, they were losing. After 4 hours of combat, Subcommander Kextar was forced to retreat with only half his fleet intact. As his ships fled toward the rally point, he sent an urgent message to High Commander Vexthul. Human defenses far exceed intelligence estimates. Request immediate reinforcement. Similar scenes were playing out across human space. Zephyrian attack forces that had expected easy victories were instead meeting fierce resistance from weapons and tactics they had never encountered. Admiral Hayes coordinated the defense from his command ship, the Liberty's Edge, hidden in the asteroid belt where Zephyrian sensors couldn't detect it. His tactical display showed human forces holding their own against numerically superior enemies. "Sir, we're receiving reports from all fronts," reported Captain Julie Davis, his communications officer. "The aliens are shocked by our resistance. Their attack formations are breaking up." Hayes studied the battle reports. They planned this invasion based on incomplete intelligence. Every assumption they made about our capabilities was wrong. Captain Morrison was leading a strike force of cloaked ships toward the Zephyrian staging area. The Terra Nova and 5 other vessels moved through space like ghosts, completely invisible to enemy sensors. "Remember, the goal is to hit their command ships and disrupt their coordination," he told his squadron. "We go in fast, strike hard, and disappear before they know what hit them." The human ships approached a massive Zephyrian battle group that was preparing to attack Earth itself. Dozens of enemy vessels floated in formation, their crews confident that human resistance would soon collapse. "All ships, lock onto the command vessels," Morrison ordered. "Fire quantum torpedoes on my mark." The quantum torpedoes were weapons that existed only in humanity's secret arsenal. They used exotic matter to phase through normal shields and armor before detonating inside enemy ships. The Zephyrians had no defense against them because they had never encountered anything like them. Mark. 6 quantum torpedoes streaked toward the Zephyrian command ships. The alien crews never saw them coming. The torpedoes passed through their shields as if they didn't exist, then exploded inside the vessel's main reactor cores. 3 command ships died instantly, taking their senior officers and tactical computers with them. The remaining Zephyrian fleet suddenly found itself without leadership or coordination. Ghost strike successful, Morrison reported. Enemy command structure neutralized. All ships, fade back to rally point. The human ships vanished as quickly as they had appeared, leaving the Zephyrians staring at empty space where their command vessels had been moments before. High Commander Vexthul watched the battle reports with growing disbelief. His forces were being defeated by creatures he had dismissed as primitive animals. Human resistance was not only stronger than expected, it was using technologies that Zephyrian science couldn't explain. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his science advisor. "Our intelligence was perfect. We studied them for months." "Sir," the advisor replied nervously, "it appears that the humans were concealing their true capabilities. What we observed was deliberately designed to make us underestimate them." Vexthul's 3 eyes glowed with rage. "You mean they deceived us?" "It would appear so, sir. Their actual military technology is generations ahead of what they showed us. They have weapons we've never seen, defenses we can't penetrate, and ships that our sensors cannot detect." The truth was beginning to dawn on the Zephyrian commander. For the first time in 50,000 years of conquest, his forces were fighting an enemy that had been prepared for them. An enemy that had spent centuries developing weapons specifically designed to fight superior alien technology. Dr. Rodriguez was monitoring the battle from her laboratory on Earth, watching as her analysis of Zephyrian weaknesses proved correct. The aliens' weapons had the long charge times and cooldown periods she had predicted. Human forces were exploiting these gaps with devastating effectiveness. "Their plasma cannons need 30 seconds to charge and 2 minutes to cool down," she reported to Admiral Hayes. "Our fighters are using hit-and-run attacks during those vulnerable periods." "What about their shields?"
Hayes asked.
"Vulnerable to our plasma frequency. It's like their defenses were designed to stop lasers and kinetic weapons, not focus plasma. We're cutting through them like they're not even there." The first day of war was ending with a result that no one had expected. Humanity was winning. The species that the Zephyrians had dismissed as primitive was systematically destroying their invasion forces with weapons and tactics that seemed to come from nowhere. As reports continued to pour in from across the battlefront, Admiral Hayes realized that humanity had achieved something remarkable. They had turned the tables on an enemy that had expected easy conquest. "All stations, this is Fleet Command," he broadcast to the human forces. "Excellent work today. The aliens came here expecting to fight primitives with sticks and stones. Instead, they found humans with plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes." The war was far from over. The Zephyrians still had numerical superiority and devastating weapons, but they no longer had the advantage of surprise or superior technology. For the first time in their empire's history, they were fighting an enemy that was ready for them. Humanity had revealed its hidden strength. Now the real war could begin. The war had been raging for 3 weeks, and humanity was doing something that shocked the galaxy. They were adapting faster than their enemies could respond. While the Zephyrians stuck to battle plans developed over thousands of years, human forces were inventing new tactics almost daily. Chief Engineer Maria Santos hadn't slept in 48 hours. She stood in the workshop aboard Prometheus Station, surrounded by half-built weapons and prototype devices that didn't exist in any manual. Her team of engineers was working at a pace that would have killed most species, fueled by coffee, determination, and the knowledge that human survival depended on their innovations. "What do you have for me today?" asked Colonel Walker as he entered the workshop. Maria wiped grease from her hands and grinned. "Something that's going to give the aliens nightmares. We call them fusion mines." She led him to a device that looked like a metal sphere covered in sensors. "The Zephyrians like to hide their ships in asteroid fields where our sensors can't track them easily. So we developed these." "How do they work?"
"Simple.
"We plant them throughout an asteroid field. They look like normal space debris until a Zephyrian ship gets within 5 kilometers. Then they activate, lock onto the target, and detonate with the force of a small star." Colonel Walker studied the device. "How How many can you make? We're already producing 1,000 per day. By next week, every asteroid field in human space will be a death trap for alien ships. Meanwhile, on New Austin, Commander Torres was implementing her own innovations. The mining colony had become a training ground for converted civilian pilots who were learning to fly captured Zephyrian fighters. The controls are completely different from human ships, explained Sergeant Cooper, who had become their best alien fighter pilot. But once you figure out their systems, these ships are actually easier to fly than ours. Torres watched as farmers, miners, and shop owners climbed into alien fighters for combat training. How long before they're ready for combat? Most of them are ready now, Cooper replied. Turns out that humans are naturally better pilots than Zephyrians. We can handle G-forces that would knock them unconscious, and our reflexes are about 30% faster. The alien fighters had been captured during raids on Zephyrian supply lines. Human forces had discovered that Zephyrian pilots couldn't handle the high-speed maneuvers that human pilots used routinely. When human fighters pulled turns that generated 8 or 9 GS of force, Zephyrian pilots would pass out, making their ships easy targets. Dr. Rodriguez had moved her laboratory to a captured Zephyrian cruiser, where she was reverse engineering alien biotechnology with frightening speed. Her latest creation was a computer virus that specifically targeted Zephyrian ship systems. It's beautiful, she explained to Admiral Hayes as she demonstrated the virus on a captured alien computer. Their systems are incredibly advanced, but they're also incredibly standardized. Every Zephyrian ship uses essentially the same computer architecture. The virus spread through the alien computer like digital cancer, shutting down life support, weapons, and navigation systems. Once we introduce this into their network, it will spread to every ship in their fleet. How do we deliver it? Hayes asked. Amy smiled. The same way they tried to spy on us. We load it into fake trade goods and let them capture them. Their own curiosity will doom them. Captain Morrison was discovering that human ships could do things that alien vessels couldn't. The Terra Nova had been modified with captured Zephyrian technology, but the human crew was using it in ways the aliens had never imagined. Captain, we've figured out how to overload their shield generators, reported Lieutenant Bradley. If we hit them with a specific frequency of plasma bursts, their shields don't just fail, they explode and take out their own ship. Morrison studied the tactical data. How did you discover this? Accident, actually. We were trying to punch through their shields when our plasma cannon malfunctioned and started cycling rapidly. The enemy ship's shields overloaded and blew up half their hull. This was typical of how humans were fighting the war. While the Zephyrians followed rigid tactical doctrines, humans were experimenting, improvising, and turning accidents into advantages. The alien empire was discovering that human creativity was their most dangerous weapon. General Carter had turned the defense of Mars into a masterpiece of adaptive tactics, using the planet's natural features in ways that confused and frustrated Zephyrian commanders. They expect us to fight like civilized species, he explained to his staff. They expect formations, predictable movements, and standard defensive positions. Instead, we're fighting like guerrillas. Human forces would appear from hidden positions in Martian canyons, strike hard and fast, then disappear into cave networks that the aliens couldn't map. When Zephyrian forces tried to follow, they found themselves in tunnels filled with automated weapons and explosive traps. The aliens were also learning that humans could survive in conditions that would kill most species. Human soldiers could operate in hard vacuum for short periods, fight in radiation levels that were lethal to aliens, and function normally in gravitational fields that would crush Zephyrian troops. Commander Torres demonstrated this when her base was attacked by Kethmori ground forces. The insectoid aliens expected the human defenders to retreat to protected areas when their base's atmosphere was breached. Instead, Torres and her people put on emergency suits and kept fighting in the vacuum of space. The bugs can't handle zero-G combat, she reported after repelling the attack. Their exoskeletons are too rigid. We just grabbed them and threw them into space. Dr. Rodriguez's biotechnology research was yielding devastating results. She had developed toxins that could affect all 3 species in the Zephyrian collective, each one targeting specific weaknesses in alien biology. The Zephyrians have liquid metal in their bloodstream, she explained. This toxin causes it to crystallize, which is fatal. The Kethmori breathe a methane-oxygen mixture, so this aerosol will poison their atmosphere. And the Veltar are energy beings living in mechanical bodies, so this electromagnetic pulse will disrupt their consciousness. Admiral Hayes reviewed her research with amazement. How long did it take you to develop these? 3 weeks. The aliens made the mistake of leaving biological samples on Europa Station when they destroyed it. We've been studying them ever since. The pace of human innovation was accelerating beyond anything the Zephyrians could match. Every day brought new weapons, new tactics, and new ways to exploit alien weaknesses. Human engineers were modifying captured alien technology faster than the original designers had developed it. Chief Santos had moved beyond individual weapons to entire strategic concepts. We're building something we call a phase cannon, she told Colonel Walker. It fires projectiles that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. What does that mean in practical terms? It means we can shoot through their shields, through their armor, and through the hull of their ship without affecting anything in between. The projectile only becomes solid when it reaches the target we specify. Such weapons would have taken the Zephyrians decades to develop and test. Human engineers had built and deployed the first prototype in 6 days. The war was revealing fundamental differences between human and alien thinking. The Zephyrians had dominated the galaxy through superior technology and overwhelming force. They had never faced an enemy that could innovate faster than they could adapt. High Commander Vex Thul was receiving reports that contradicted everything he knew about warfare. How are they developing new weapons faster than we can counter them? He demanded. Sir, their entire approach to combat is different from any species we've encountered, his tactical advisor replied. They don't follow doctrine. They don't use standard formations. Every battle seems to be an experiment for them. And they're winning these experiments? Yes, sir. Their casualty rates should be catastrophic, but somehow they're defeating forces that outnumber them 10 to 1. The truth was that humans had evolved as persistence hunters on a dangerous world. They were naturally adapted to face impossible odds, improvise solutions under pressure, and keep fighting long after other species would have given up. Captain Morrison demonstrated this during a battle near Jupiter when his squadron was surrounded by 50 Zephyrian ships. Instead of retreating or surrendering, he led his ships into the gas giant's atmosphere, using the crushing pressure and electrical storms to disable enemy vessels that weren't designed for such conditions. Human ships are built to handle anything, he reported after emerging with his squadron intact. Alien ships are built to handle predictable space environments. Guess which approach works better in a real war? As the month of warfare continued, the pattern became clear. Humanity wasn't just holding off the alien invasion. They were winning through pure creative fury. Every human victory taught them something new about their enemies, and every lesson was immediately applied to develop even deadlier weapons and tactics. The Zephyrian Empire was facing something they had never encountered in 50,000 years of conquest, an enemy that got stronger the longer the war lasted. High Commander Vex Thul stood before the Supreme Coordinator of the Zephyrian Collective, feeling something he had never experienced in 5 centuries of military service: fear of failure. The holographic projection of his superior glowed with angry red light, indicating extreme displeasure. Explain to me, the Supreme Coordinator said in a voice like grinding metal, how a primitive species has resisted our forces for 6 weeks. Vex Thul struggled to find words that wouldn't sound like excuses. Supreme Coordinator, the humans have capabilities that exceeded all projections. They possess weapons and tactics that our intelligence failed to detect. Then use the planet killer, the Coordinator commanded. End this embarrassment. Destroy their homeworld, and be done with it. Vex Thul felt relief wash through him. The planet killer was the collective's ultimate weapon, a massive device that could crack a world's core and scatter its pieces across space. No species had ever survived its deployment. It will be done, Supreme Coordinator. Earth will be destroyed within the day. But the humans had been listening. Dr. Rodriguez sat in her laboratory aboard the captured Zephyrian cruiser, surrounded by monitoring equipment that was intercepting alien communications. Her computer virus had done more than just damage enemy ships. It had given humanity access to the entire Zephyrian communication network. "Admiral, we have a problem," she said over the secure channel to Hayes. "They're bringing their planet killer to the Sol system. It's a weapon designed to destroy entire worlds." Admiral Hayes felt his blood turn to ice. "How long do we have?" "Based on their transmission, maybe 18 hours before it arrives." "And Admiral, this thing is massive. It's bigger than our largest space station." President Mitchell received the news in the White House bunker, where she had been coordinating the war effort. The weight of humanity's potential extinction settled on her shoulders like a crushing load. "Options?" she asked the assembled military leaders. "We could evacuate Earth," suggested General Carter. "Get as many people off-world as possible." 12 billion people in 18 hours? Admiral Hayes shook his head. "Impossible. We don't have enough ships." "Then we fight," President Mitchell said quietly. "We make our stand here." The planet killer emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, and even hardened military officers gasped when they saw it. The weapon was a sphere 50 kilometers in diameter, covered in energy collectors that made space around it glow with deadly radiation. "All human forces, this is Admiral Hayes," the fleet commander broadcast. "Every ship, every weapon, every person capable of fighting is ordered to Earth's defense. This is humanity's final battle." From across the solar system, human ships began converging on Earth. Mining vessels, cargo haulers, passenger liners, anything that could carry a weapon was pressed into service. Civilians volunteered for missions that were barely short of suicide. Commander Torres led a fleet of converted civilian ships from the outer colonies. "This is New Austin Squadron," she reported. 47 ships inbound. "We may not be military, but we're still human." Captain Morrison brought the Terra Nova alongside Admiral Hayes's flagship. The ship had been modified so many times during the war that it barely resembled its original design. "Ready for whatever you need us to do, Admiral." The planet killer began its approach toward Earth, protected by the largest Zephyrian fleet ever assembled. 300 warships surrounded the massive weapon, creating a defensive screen that seemed impenetrable. But humanity had one advantage that the aliens hadn't counted on: desperation mixed with brilliant tactical thinking. "Maria, please tell me you have something," Admiral Hayes said to Chief Engineer Santos over the communication link. "Actually, I do," she replied from her workshop on Prometheus Station. "The planet killer is powered by zero-point energy extraction. If we can disrupt the quantum field that contains it, the weapon will tear itself apart." "How do we disrupt a quantum field?" "With this." Maria held up a device that looked like a metal briefcase covered in warning labels. "I call it a quantum destabilizer. It creates a cascade failure in zero-point energy systems." "How do we get it close enough to the planet killer?" Maria's expression was grim. "Someone has to fly it manually into the weapon's core. The destabilizer has to be placed within 50 meters of the main reactor to work." Admiral Hayes understood immediately. "A suicide mission." "Not necessarily," said Commander Torres over the communication channel. "I volunteer. My ship is fast and has the best stealth systems." "Lisa, no," Hayes replied. "I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking, Admiral. I'm volunteering. My colony was the first place they attacked. This is personal." While Torres prepared for her mission, the main battle began. The human fleet engaged the Zephyrian defensive screen with everything they had: quantum torpedoes, plasma cannons, fusion mines, and weapons that had been invented just days before filled space with deadly energy. Dr. Rodriguez's computer virus chose that moment to activate across the Zephyrian fleet. Enemy ships suddenly found their systems failing, their weapons powering down, and their navigation computers displaying error messages in human languages. "The virus is working," Amy reported. "Half their fleet is losing power." Captain Morrison led a squadron of stealth fighters through the chaos, using the confusion to target Zephyrian command ships. "Ghost Squadron, this is Morrison. The aliens are blind and confused. Hit them now." The human fighters struck like invisible demons, appearing from nowhere to destroy enemy vessels before vanishing again. The Zephyrians, already struggling with system failures, found themselves unable to maintain formation. But the planet killer continued its approach, protected by its own massive shields. The weapon began charging its core, preparing to crack Earth's crust and scatter the planet's fragments across space. Commander Torres flew her ship toward the massive weapon, using every stealth modification that human engineering could provide. Her vessel, the Defiant Spirit, was barely visible even to human sensors as it approached the planet killer's surface. "Torres to Fleet Command," she transmitted. "I'm at the target, beginning penetration of their outer hull." The planet killer's surface was covered with defensive turrets, but they were designed to stop large ships, not a single stealth fighter. Torres flew between the weapon emplacements, searching for an entrance to the core. "There," she said to herself as she spotted a maintenance port. "That'll do." Her ship squeezed through the opening, and suddenly, she was inside the planet killer itself. The interior was a maze of energy conduits and mechanical systems, all focused on the massive reactor at the weapon's center. "Fleet Command, I'm inside the weapon. The reactor is enormous. It's like flying through the heart of a star." "Torres, get out of there," Admiral Hayes ordered. "We'll find another way." "No, sir. This is our only chance." Lisa armed the quantum destabilizer and began her final approach to the reactor core. "Tell my people on New Austin that I'm proud to serve with them." But then something unexpected happened. As Torres approached the reactor, her sensors detected something that changed everything. The planet killer's core was connected to every Zephyrian ship in the fleet through quantum entanglement. "Admiral, the weapon isn't just connected to Earth," she reported. "It's connected to their entire fleet. If I destabilize this reactor, it'll create a cascade failure that affects every Zephyrian ship in the system." Hayes understood immediately. "Torres, are you saying what I think you're saying?" "Yes, sir. This won't just save Earth. This will destroy their entire invasion force." Lisa Torres flew her ship directly into the planet killer's reactor core, a chamber filled with energy that was hotter than the center of the sun. Her ship's shields began failing immediately, but she held course. "For humanity," she shouted as she activated the quantum destabilizer. The device worked exactly as designed. The planet killer's zero-point energy reactor began cascading into failure, but the quantum entanglement that connected it to the Zephyrian fleet meant that every alien ship in the system began experiencing the same failure. One by one, 300 Zephyrian warships lost power as their reactors went critical. The massive planet killer, the ultimate weapon of an empire that had conquered the galaxy, tore itself apart in an explosion that could be seen from Earth with the naked eye. High Commander Vexthal had just enough time to send one final message to the Supreme Coordinator. "The humans have destroyed our fleet. They are not primitive. They are the most dangerous species in the galaxy." The Battle of Earth was over. Humanity had not just survived the Zephyrian invasion, they had completely destroyed it. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years had just lost its entire military force to a species they had dismissed as primitive animals. As the wreckage of the alien fleet drifted through space, Admiral Hayes addressed the human forces. "Today, humanity proved that we belong among the stars. We didn't just defend our world. We announced to the galaxy that Earth's children are not to be underestimated." But the war was far from over. Now humanity had to decide what to do with their victory. The destruction of the Zephyrian invasion fleet sent shockwaves across the galaxy that reached far beyond the Sol system. Within hours of the planet killer's destruction, monitoring stations throughout human space detected something unprecedented. Alien civilizations were broadcasting messages of surrender, rebellion, and desperate pleas for human protection. Admiral Hayes stood in the command center of his flagship, watching as communication requests flooded in from across the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved by the Zephyrian collective for thousands of years were rising up against their oppressors. "Sir, we're receiving over 300 different alien signals," reported Captain Davis. "Most of them are asking for our help to overthrow Zephyrian occupation forces." President Mitchell joined the call from Earth, her face showing the exhaustion of leading humanity through its darkest hour. "Admiral, what's our status?" "Madam President, We've won more than just a battle. The entire Zephyrian Empire appears to be collapsing. Their subject species are revolting, and their remaining military forces are in complete disarray. But Hayes knew that victory brought new responsibilities. We need to decide what kind of galactic power we want to be. The answer came from an unexpected source. High Commander Vexthal, who had survived the destruction of his fleet in an escape pod, was brought aboard the human flagship as a prisoner. The once proud alien commander looked broken, his liquid metal skin dull, and his 3 eyes filled with something humans had never seen from his species: respect. "You defeated us," he said simply when brought before Admiral Hayes. "In 50,000 years, no species has ever defeated the collective. We underestimated you completely." Dr. Rodriguez, who had been studying Zephyrian psychology, asked the question that everyone wanted answered. "Why did you think you could conquer us?" Vexthal's 3 eyes focused on her. "Because every species we had encountered fell into predictable patterns. They either surrendered immediately when faced with superior force, or they fought with honor according to established military doctrine. You did neither." "What did we do instead?" Admiral Hayes asked. "You fought like the universe itself was trying to kill us. You used tactics that should have been impossible. You created weapons during the battle. You turned our own technology against us. You made war itself evolve." The alien commander paused. "We were not fighting a civilization. We were fighting pure, weaponized creativity." Colonel Walker led the first expedition to reclaim worlds that had been under Zephyrian control. His forces found alien colonies where oppressed species had already overthrown their occupiers, using crude weapons against Zephyrian technology that had suddenly stopped working when the planet killer was destroyed. "It's incredible," he reported back to Earth. "The virus that Dr. Rodriguez created didn't just affect their military ships. It infected every piece of Zephyrian technology in the galaxy. Their entire infrastructure just shut down." The liberated worlds painted a picture of an empire that had ruled through fear and technological superiority, but had never inspired loyalty. The moment their technology failed, their subject species turned on them with generations of suppressed anger. Chief Engineer Santos found herself in charge of the most massive reverse engineering project in galactic history. Captured Zephyrian technology was providing humanity with scientific advances that would have taken centuries to develop naturally. "We've got faster-than-light communication, matter replication, gravity manipulation, and artificial intelligence that makes our best computers look like pocket calculators," she reported to President Mitchell. "But the real prize is their star charts. We now have maps of the entire galaxy." Dr. Rodriguez made an even more significant discovery while studying Zephyrian records. "Madam President, I found something in their historical databases. The collective wasn't the first galactic empire. They destroyed 3 previous civilizations that ruled before them. What happened to those civilizations? They became too comfortable with their power. They stopped innovating, stopped adapting. When the Zephyrians came with superior technology, these ancient empires couldn't respond fast enough to survive." The parallels were obvious and troubling. Humanity was suddenly the dominant military force in the galaxy, possessing technology that was generations ahead of any potential rival. The question was whether they would make the same mistakes as their predecessors. President Mitchell convened a special session of the Global Assembly to decide humanity's response to their new galactic responsibilities. Representatives from every human world participated in the debate that would shape the future of the galaxy. "We could establish our own empire," suggested Governor Chun from the Mars colonies. "Use our military superiority to bring order to the galaxy." "And become the next Zephyrian collective," replied President Mitchell. "Rule through fear and force until some other species comes along to overthrow us?" Admiral Hayes proposed a different approach. "What if we don't try to rule the galaxy? What if we just defend it?" The concept that emerged from the debates was revolutionary: the Human Galactic Defense Force. Instead of conquering and ruling other species, humanity would serve as protectors, preventing any single civilization from dominating the galaxy the way the Zephyrians had. Captain Morrison was among the first to volunteer for the new organization. "We've seen what happens when one species gets too powerful," he said. Our job should be to make sure it never happens again. The establishment of the Defense Force required unprecedented cooperation between humanity and the liberated alien species. Former Zephyrian subjects provided intelligence about galactic politics, while humans contributed military technology and tactical expertise. Commander Torres, who had been presumed dead in the planet killer explosion but had actually survived in an escape pod, became the first human to command a mixed-species military unit. Her squadron included pilots from 12 different worlds, all united by their determination to prevent another galactic tyranny. "It's amazing how well we work together," she reported after her first joint mission. "Turns out that most species value freedom just as much as humans do." The transformation of galactic politics happened with shocking speed. Within 6 months of the Zephyrian defeat, humanity had established defense stations throughout the galaxy, created trade agreements with hundreds of species, and begun sharing technology that improved life for billions of beings. But the most important change was philosophical. The galaxy had learned that technological superiority didn't guarantee victory, and that underestimating an opponent could be fatal. Species that had been preparing for conquest suddenly found themselves reconsidering the wisdom of aggressive expansion. Dr. Rodriguez established the Galactic Science Exchange, where species could share knowledge and research without fear of their discoveries being used against them. "The Zephyrians hoarded their technology to maintain their advantage," she explained. "We're going to do the opposite. The more knowledge we share, the stronger the galaxy becomes." High Commander Vexthul, who had been given a choice between execution and cooperation, chose to help humanity understand the political structure of the former collective. His information proved invaluable in preventing the emergence of new tyrannies. "Why are you helping us?" Admiral Hayes asked him during one of